and they're taking over our elections, and we are turning blue very fast.
What's hilarious is I know that there are Democrat nonprofits whose goal is to greet the new people moving to the area and get to them first.
And they will know if they just come out as liberals. So a lot of times in a state like Idaho that's predominantly red, they will hide themselves as Republicans. And
they pose as being constitutional. They say all the right things. You know, they're wolves. they're wolves in sheep's clothing.
But they're strategic. They know what they're doing, and they know they can't just come in and be as bold as they would like to be. So they come undercover, and we see that a lot, and it's getting worse. And there's so much of that.
The reason why I came here was, again, I wanted to be free, but I had heard my whole life that Idaho was a very extremist state, a far-right state with a lot of wacky white supremacist individuals. You and your potatoes and your white supremacy.
Right. Why they're using that against Republicans. It's a Republican primary, and they know Republicans don't want extremism. It's just that they're trying to leverage that against them.
So we have candidates that are going into the election, boom, they're labeled with you're an extremist and you're white supremacist.
Yeah.
Just
you hear that on the radio or on an advertisement.
And then immediately people turn their brain off and they're like, whoa, I don't want to associate with a white supremacist. And a lot of times what they try to do is they try to divide and conquer between the Democrats and the Republicans, and then they try to divide and conquer between the conservatives in their own group.
We've seen real extremism in this area, and what it is, it's people going to Ben Tate's children and intimidating them, and we've seen that in this community, right?
Yeah.
And I think I heard a story about Ben Tate's getting spat on, like. That's extremism.
It's a little bit, in my opinion, it's playing dirty. It's like, I thought that in these kinds of elections, we're just gonna, playing dirty at this local level, our people in Coeur d'Alene really need to think about why there would be that kind of animosity at such a low level. Why are they trying so hard to fight over Coeur d'Alene?
Coeur d'Alene and Kootenai County area were to fall into liberalism. There's nothing left. So that's why it would be a target.
It's time we can't just live our quiet, peaceful lives and keep to ourselves. We need to go on the offense and say, we have to keep this red up. Let's push back and get back to a good community.
Unless you want to be the next Portland or Seattle. I mean, I came from there. Y'all don't want that.
Everywhere the left comes in and touches, it creates havoc and it destroys.
So when people are trying to vote, what should they be looking for?
Look at who is paying or funding that organization. That's a key thing to think about. Who's paying or funding that? Is this like a grassroots conservative, or is this somebody that has some suspicious funding that maybe you should just look into that?
I think a big thing too is you see these people in Congress or even locally, but especially in Congress, and they're obviously bought and paid for by lobbyist groups. They go in. The salary is about $150,000.
Butch Otter was that way.
And
Butch Otter was bought and paid.
What is?
Butch Otter.
Oh, okay.
Anyway.
And then they come out millionaires. Well, that happened for a reason, because people are paying them basically to pass laws certain ways and to do the things that they want them to. And I think that's the bigger problem. I think that's what the Rhino is. The Rhino doesn't have any necessarily ideals besides staying in office and not changing anything or looking too weird so they can get reelected and keep making money, basically. And that, I think, is the bigger issue. Is, are these people controlled by conviction, or are they controlled by money?
One of the things we can do, just as individuals, is we can look at who's supporting these. And that's, they kind of do that too, and they put that out. They say, hey guys, look at this group or this person who's supporting them. Even there are some Republicans that are running. The Democrats, the Kootenai County Democrat group, Central Committee, has put out recommendations for the Republicans. Like, you should look at that and go, okay, something doesn't quite look right,
If you're endorsed by Take Back Idaho, Idaho 97, or the Kootenai County Democrat Central Committee,
it raises red flags. You should look at that.
You should
do your own research. But look at those groups, know who those groups are and what they stand for.
They got a pullback, or someone told them they're not going to work with them anymore. That's what we want, right? And so we're trying to shut them out. Ultimately, the strategy is to make the Freedom Foundation too toxic to touch. And once they're too toxic, they lose all their power. Now it's not over. Because there's 3 or 4 other groups out there that will just immediately step into the vacuum, right? So then we're going to have to be ready to move on those groups. But the Freedom Foundation is the most structured group right now, and that's why we're engaging with them in that way.
Democrats who are organizing to get other Democrats to register Republican and ask Democrats to outreach to reasonable Republicans and unaffiliated voters who need to be also turning out, where we just have a large majority of conservative voters and reasonable conservative voters at that who just aren't making it to the polls in the primary. And we expect Democrats will see this strategy as viable and say, hey, you know, I want to add to that goal number, so I'm going to register. We're estimating that there are likely to be about 10 to 12 races where the primaries in the Republican primary are going to come down to less than 1,000 votes. And we are going to focus on those areas the most and mathematically build up to a block that blocks higher state offices like governor, like lieutenant governor and secretary of state.